Issue 118. After Sonic says that something as big and slow as the giant Sentinel will never catch him, he's told that unless he'd surrender, the Master Sentinel will destroy Emerald Village. Sonic says they're gonna stop the thing and get his attention by throwing a pebble at his chest, and we have the same stupidity happen twice as Grimer once again talks about Eggman already knowing the location of the emeralds, and Eggman talks about how he wants to rule the universe himself for the sake of the audience, and they're doing this right in front of these guys. Again, I honestly expected them to hear them, but I guess not. Those panels were just worthless wastes of comic space that only existed because I think readers are goldfish who need to be reminded of the obvious, and all they do is have stupid writing because Grimer and Eggman aren't even whispering to each other. Then we see Sonic in the fists of the Sentinel telling Tails that he's fine, and he somehow escapes from its tight grip on half his body and spin dashes around in a circle above it to create a tornado. He uses the tornado to create a water vortex in the ocean the Sentinel somehow not sank in, and it immediately comes back from the ocean and tries to hit Sonic after Tails warns him about it. Sonic tells Tails to keep his miscalculation between them, and Tails says, "Never mind about your ego, Sonic." I like when this Tails talks back to this Sonic, because this Sonic is intentionally written to be a jerk who would deserve it, and Tails is a nice guy normally instead of punchable like in Colors. Tails flies Sonic over to the hole in the robot's chest so that he can go inside, as I hope that he actually will tell people about the miscalculation. And Sonic says, "Careful is for wimps," in response to Tails' warning. He uses his spin dash to destroy it from the inside, as I wonder why the spinning wind above Tails' tails is blue like a spin dash instead of orange or yellow like his fur. The Sentinel falls over and Tails grabs Sonic after he jumps out of the hole, and he says that the prosecutor that was threatening them got away. Grimer then says that he's sick of working for Eggman because he deserves better, and says that if the Emperor lets him join him, he'll lead him to the emeralds. This was foreshadowed by Grimer always being mistreated by Eggman, often violently. And he's not unlikable like Snively by being painfully obvious about his evil scheming against Eggman all the time. But it still comes out of complete nowhere since he's been totally loyal to him the whole time despite that mistreatment. But I'd rather it not be too foreshadowed because then it would completely ruin the surprise before it got a chance to happen. In the next story, which I'm much more interested in, Pajama screens from mind linking with Super and learning everything, and for absolutely no reason whatsoever, Super's memories have returned from that. If the psychic learned his memories from a mind link, even though he should have no memories at all to learn about, and maybe there were still remnants of them in him and she formed them back into memories, so maybe when she learned about the memories and she was mind linked with him, that gave him the same visions and returned his memories. But this still feels out of nowhere. Super's eyes look shrunken as he says that he remembers everything. And he says recall instead of remember, not talking like Sonic. So is he gonna randomly go back to being insanely evil just because he remembers that he used to be evil? Which would make no sense. After Ebony realizes who is calling him an evil demon in surprise, and Super says, "I'm afraid so," in response. Biohazard, who crashed through the wall, says that his boss wants to absorb Super's power to turn himself into an omnipotent god, and he asks, "That sound crazy to you?" Is he being sarcastic? Of course it's crazy. Shouldn't he know it is? Wasn't his whole team complaining about that plan? Pajama tells him that when his memories came back, conveniently all of his powers came back too for no reason whatsoever. And she says that he can stop Biohazard with those powers. I almost typed Biolizard there. Supersonic, having learned his lesson from earlier in life, says that the last time he used his energy, he felt an uncontrollable urge to destroy, and he refuses to tap into that terrible power again. Kinda don't have a choice if you want to defend yourself. Does it count as using that power if you just punch like a normal person? I guess so, because he'd be punching with Sonic speed, but couldn't he control when he's using Sonic speed and when he's not? Biohazard tries to operate the teleporter to take them back, and after he asks what's happening, Super also asks what's happening as well, and he and Ebony are warped away. Then back in Lord Sidewinder's control room in the special zone, we see him handcuffed, with the sheriff saying that he figured that if he shut off his machine, he'd find out where Biohazard had gotten to. And somehow he was right, and turning off the teleporter teleported him here, instead of simply turning off the teleporter and not letting him warp back. I mean, I guess if Ebony had been the one who teleported them away from the bad guy, it would be overpowered, and I'd be asking why she doesn't take down Eggman with that by warping to him with rope. Or since Eggman's already taken down, I mean like take down some other bad guy. But still, that would make more sense than this. Sidewinder's told that they have a nice padded cell for him. And we see Ebony in pajamas in the destroyed green fog-filled remains of the Groovy Tree coffee bar, where Pajamas heartwarmingly says she owes him an apology. It really is a shame that Super will probably be forced to fuse with Sonic later for status quo, because what's the point of the story arc at all then? It's fun, it's interesting, but Super Sonic wonders if it would be better if he gave himself up, because his evilness might be released again if he used his powers to defend himself, which he'll inevitably have to do. Rather than telling him that if he gives himself up, he'll be kept in one famous location, and so any villain who wants to use his power will just go there to release him. And so he's probably better hiding in a place where no one would suspect him to be. Instead of saying that, Pajamas then warns him that nobody would ever believe that he changed, and he would just be locked up. Isn't that what Super's talking about in the first place? Giving himself up? Ebony then ends the story by giving him a job cleaning up the building. I hope they'll figure out some sort of disguise for him, because he'll be recognized here eventually, won't he? I mean, I guess Super destroys everything around him, so it leaves no witnesses, but I don't know. In the next story, Tails turns down an awful-looking fake Christmas tree, and says that while he prefers real ones, he's not sure if it's right to cut them down. That's the dilemma of being a nature lover, I guess. Then a biochemist tells him that he's got a special formula to regrow trees instantly. Speaking of instantly, we immediately see flying badniks, and when Tails gets sprayed by the formula, he grows incredibly tall just like the tree did, even though he's not a tree, and so it wouldn't have been designed for him. And the biochemist should have known that this would happen because it's his formula. I mean, I guess he never tested out on non-trees, because why would he, but you'd think he'd be questioning this. Tails destroys the badniks, and then accidentally damages something with his foot, and when he tries to fly, his tails create a hurricane that sends people flying up in the air, requiring him to catch them. I mean, can you imagine, like, that would have been so helpful for him to be a giant when Eggman was in power. He could have taken him down himself, though it would have been really silly compared to the climactic way he was taken down instead. At least one of the people cheers at that and shows appreciation for his heroism. When it starts raining, Tails says he could shelter them from the rain to make up for everything. This is so sweet. And the rain washes the formula off and conveniently returns him to normal. It's sweet because like he's a gentle giant. He's trying not to be destructive and people understand that. I like this story, I think. The story ends with Tails bringing Sonic a terrible looking Christmas tree to his annoyance because I guess he destroyed the other ones. I'm glad Tails didn't get in huge trouble and get shunned and insulted for being a giant and causing destruction, because that would have fit in with the way he's usually treated like crap. In the next story, on Flicky's Island, I mean, it's pretty interesting that Flicky's Island is used for such a long time and for a new main base of Eggman's at that. And it's good that it's like an island, because it makes sense, because it's an island, it's more isolated. And it's a famous part of the Sonic franchise, because it's the Flicky's Island in particular. So it's pretty interesting. Anyways, on Flicky's Island, Eggman tells Grimer to prepare some more badniks for an attack on Emerald Hill to target Amy and Techno instead of Sonic. It's smart of him to aim for the weaker targets that are less capable of defeating the badniks. That's genre savvy of him. But then he stops being that when he jinxes it by saying, "Let's see her genius at electronics save her now. I wonder if it will." After a bunch of panels are wasted redundantly, Electro Scanners register Techno's beak print, and the door to her underground workshop slides open for her. Pretty smart of her to seal it with, like, biometrics. And she creates a multi-image projector to make holograms of herself, just like Antoine did in his solo story in a much less clear way that was just confusing. Here at least makes perfect sense. Amy compliments her, saying that the robots are so confused that they're hitting each other with lasers in a panic. Amy gets threatened, and Techno is asked for the device, and because she doesn't want to risk Amy's life, she gives it up. And Eggman is excited about the idea of creating thousands of Badnik images to terrify people into obeying him. I'm sure they'd be discovered as just illusions eventually, from someone tripping and falling into them, or driving into them, or stumbling into them, and then news would spread and nobody would take any Badnik seriously anymore. Because they would just assume they're all illusions. Besides, I'm sure Techno planned for this, too. Is there a bomb that'll only go off against Grimer or Eggman? A password only she knows? Oh, never mind, it's much simpler and less vicious than that. It only produces holograms of Techno. Naturally, since I guess it's made with her biometrics specifically. Causing Eggman to hilariously say, "Ah! That canary's haunting me!" and destroy it without even trying to learn about and replicate technology for himself. We start out in the next story right away with the people of Emerald Hill getting attacked by Badniks. Omni and the lampshades that they never get a minute's peace asks if someone can save them, and Sonic lampshades that he's surprised they had to ask. He tells the citizens to keep out of his way while he defeats the Badniks, and he cleverly lets two of the tougher ones smash into each other. See, like, it's more forgivable to see any Sonic character fighting robots over and over again, if at least they defeat them in more creative ways. Eggman gives them a message and says that Sonic can meet him at Sky High Peak for a truce, promising no tricks or weapons. It's obviously a trap, but I guess Sonic's gonna go there anyways because the plot demands it. Wouldn't Eggman feel stupid if he just waited there and Sonic never showed up? The Mobian is genre savvy and warns him that it's a trap, but Sonic decides to risk it just in case it isn't because otherwise the plot won't go anywhere. Eggman tells Sonic on top of the high steep rock that if he allows him to control just one zone, he'll never bother anyone again. Yeah, other than the people of that one zone. Which is probably Emerald Hill Zone. He never specifies which zone it is. Naturally, Sonic refuses, and it's revealed that he was just talking to a hologram, causing him to remark the amusing line, "I always knew you weren't all there." Then a plasma ray cannon operated from his headquarters is aimed at Sonic, and it's revealed that Sonic was just a hologram too, as he asked Techno to transmit a hologram of him to the peak. The first two stories were by Nigel Kitchen. The first story has Sonic defeating the giant Sentinel robot, and Grimer deciding to side with the Dracon Empire and lead the Emperor to the Emeralds because naturally he hasn't mistreated him like Eggman has. I'm sure this will just be temporary though because status quo is God, and Grimer will arbitrarily go back to working for Eggman anyways, even though I prefer Grimer being separate from him. And he'd work fine that way since Eggman doesn't even need a second engineer. The second story has the psychics mind-linking with Super not only restore his memories, but also magically restore his powers for no reason whatsoever. I mean, he could at least explain it as he always had those powers and he just remembered he could use them. And the biohazard gets inexplicably teleported away because the teleporting device was turned off by a cop that inevitably found it. Yeah, that makes sense. And Super decides to never use his powers again because he's worried he'll return to being evil if he does. An interesting sort of tension. Causing Pajamas to realize he's changed, and Ebony to give him a job at her coffee bar. And the last three stories are by Lou Stringer. They involve Tails being turned into a giant by a tree-growing formula with realistic consequences and not being hated for them, since the people were nice like that. We also had Techno distracting Badniks with a device that makes holograms of her that Eggman destroys rather than trying to make something like it because he panicked. And the final story was about Sonic fooling Eggman in his fake truce talk with a hologram of himself made by Techno to avoid getting hit by a ray gun trap, which was a clever plot twist.